Let's bring in Catherine McGregor and Nicholas Rees, as ever, to discuss the big issues of the week. Thanks for joining us. Nicholas, must be tough in Melbourne this week.
Yeah, it has been a tough week, Chris. We had the record number of cases there with 723, and then another bad day today with 627. Look, the R number is coming down, the reproduction rate, and according to our chief health officer, it's now gone from, was up close to 2, now down to 1, but it still means we're having 400, 500 plus cases a day, and that's not good. And then just this afternoon, there's been a case of a big building site in the central city that had a dozen workers identified with COVID-19, and that's got the hairs running now about what that's going to mean for the construction industry more broadly. Yeah,
it's amazing to see. Catherine, we hate to see the number of infections, especially the number of deaths. What's happening in aged care homes has been really troubling. But I also find it really disturbing, frankly, to see the sort of police state mentality we've got now. People arrested, the idiots sort of campaigning against masks, but seeing them arrested and taken away. And also, you know, the way so many publicly and in the media are sort of finding scapegoats here and there and really publicly shaming anybody who's breaking the rules.
Well, yeah, look, I hear what you're saying, and I've said at numerous times during this period, Chris, that I think a number of constitutional points have been missed in the way that all the activities arising out of this pandemic have been conducted. Yes, closed borders where there is a proportionate need to do so, but Section 92 is in the Constitution for a reason. The provisions about the call-out of our military forces for domestic purposes, those I's have to be dotted, and those manner and form provisions have to be adhered to. And yet we've got this informal sort of telephone hookup that has no constitutional status making these decisions all the time. So, yeah, I'm alert to the fact that we're seeing some erosion of civil liberties, but yeah, things like masks, that's not a hill I'm going to die on. I think it reduces risk. It's important. Public shaming, if you're referring to the case of the kids in Queensland, I'm pretty unsympathetic, frankly, because, look, every night on the television news, there are court cases where people have broken laws, where they're shamed, they're perp walked out of the court, regardless of race, colour or creed. And I'm not going to shed too many tears over a couple of entitled narcissists breaching border regulations. Yeah, look, there's been plenty of idiots doing silly things, and these two girls have copped a hell of a lot. Front pages saying that they're enemies of the state, and I think that's understandable. What I think's been really irksome in this, though, I think perhaps we've been a bit excited about these things because there's a lot of people breaking rules. But what's really irksome, if we have a look at these tweets, this is Stephen Mayne, who you'll both know well, tweeting to Jane Marwick, and he says that they're getting extra attention from the likes of you, Jane Marwick, and the broader right in the media, News Corp and, the 9 radio shock jobs. I suppose he's talking about 3AW and 2GB, because they're young female African migrants, suggesting there's racism here. Jane Marwick quite rightly says, no, at least that's not my motivation. I'm just shocked by what they did. I have to be honest to say their ethnicity hadn't occurred to me until you pointed it out. They could have had fair hair, blue eyes, and she's still gobsmacked by their actions. And she's right, isn't she, Nicholas? Because we've seen that there's another woman in Melbourne who bluffed her way through a checkpoint, and she was harangued by the media and tracked down by the police, and we've had endless Karens around the place publicly shamed.
Well, look, Stephen Mayne's a former City of Melbourne councillor, and look, I, for one, think he makes a very positive contribution to public debate in Melbourne. I mean, the case of these two girls, I mean, it's obviously they have behaved pretty badly. Sounds like they came to a party in Melbourne, then lied at the border to get back into Queensland and obviously spread COVID-19. I do think, and so they've behaved badly, no doubt, and, I'm sure the book's going to be thrown at them. But there was, a bit of trial by media, I think, going on there this week. As you said, the fact that their faces were splashed across the front page, they were named. It's a case of, in this febrile environment particularly, it's a case of trial by media. And then, look, that headline, enemies of the state, given they are of African background, I mean, I think that is open to some misinterpretation. So I think the language was a little bit excessive.
Yeah, I think it was a bit over the top, as I say, because a lot of people are doing the wrong thing. But, Catherine, I just don't see racism. I just think we're beyond that. There are some people in the public debate who want to see racism wherever they look.
Well, look, I was unaware of their race until this topic was flagged today, and I actually read into the story. I was absolutely unaware of their background. All I knew that they were teenagers who'd breached the border control issues. But what I'd love to do is to do a correlation between all those raging against the Courier Mail and the usual Murdoch conspiracy, and see how many of them tweeted they hoped that Peter Dutton would die of COVID when he was diagnosed. Because all this kind of conspicuous compassion and virtue signalling and playing the race card, it's all very convenient and situational. But all the pylons I saw, and I rarely visit Twitter, but I went and had a look, and it was the usual suspects, all ranting about Murdoch and the Courier Mail. And yeah, that headline, I think, was over the top, unwarranted. They're kids, people make mistakes. But let's be frank, a lot of the same people squealing today had no hesitation in wishing a cabinet minister with a young family dead, and they said it in as many words.
Stay away from Twitter. That sewer is worth staying away from, I think. Now, let's lighten the mood again a little bit, or maybe this is even much more deeply worrying. And let's have a look at the latest comments from the man who, if the polls are right, could be the leader of the free world in just about 99 days from now.
Welcome to Kingswood Community Centre. Actually, that's the one down I used to work. As a joke. You didn't know where we were. Anyway, it's great to be here and back in a place where,
Joe Biden there speaking in, well, we don't know where, somewhere where he thought he wasn't. Nicholas, it's a worry. He's not up to this gig, is he?
I don't think that's right, Chris. I mean, look, I've been out on the campaign trail with a Prime Minister. You've been out on the campaign trail with a leader in a national election. Like, you do so many gigs in one day. You know, I was young and sprightly, and I'd still turn up to town halls going, "Where are we again?" So I think it's perfectly understandable that Joe Biden would make a slip like that. And really, shame on you, Chris. You're just falling straight into the Donald Trump sleazy playbook there.
No. Look, honestly, this guy, time and time again, he gets everything wrong. He's not up to it, Nicholas. And if I was a Democrat supporter, I'd be saying, don't lose the unlosable by running this man. And Catherine, as you know, he's not confused by a heavy schedule. He's spending most of the time in his own basement.
Yeah, Nicholas, you've just got to be a bit fair dinkum here. Seriously, that wasn't one episode. Don't laugh if you wish, but this is cumulative. Even the Washington Post is running columns saying that they're concerned about this guy. It is now, every time he opens his mouth, 150 million people killed by guns since 2007.
Yes.
85,000 job losses during the pandemic. Every number that comes out of his mouth is absolutely off the charts wrong. It was an issue when Ronald Reagan debated Mondale in 1984, and Reagan was ridiculed and lampooned for his age. He left office younger than this guy will be in office if he's elected. This is a serious issue. I'm not making light of it, and it behoves you ill to pretend that this is a simple error of judgment on the campaign trail. It's cumulative. It's happening every time he appears anywhere, and it now is obviously clinically induced.
Biden is a decent person, he's experienced, and he follows the advice of competent people. Isn't that exactly what America needs at the moment?
Well, it needs somebody who's competent and aware of what's going on, and I'd be very surprised. It is starting to become very plausible that at their convention in the next month, the Democrats might like to look to switch him out.
I think he's heading for a landslide victory. I mean, I'm sure there'll be plenty of people in the Democrats wetting their pants about losing what looks to be the unlosable. But he's got the experience. He's a very decent person. Yes, he's made a few slips, but at the moment he is winning.
All right, now we haven't got much time.
From where I am,
Sorry, Catherine. I know you've spoken about this issue this week, and I know you could speak to us for eloquently for half an hour on this. But in a nutshell, should we be looking at out of this new arrangement with the US that came out of AUSMIN? It's going to focus on Darwin. This new agreement that the Parliament and the Cabinet hasn't seen yet, as I understand.
Yeah, look, there's some talk about it being a great secret agreement. I'm not sure there's anything particularly new in it. Nicholas mentioned last week this arrangement with rotating US Marines through Darwin's not novel. There's going to be some stockpiling of fuel and other resources, so good to see some supply chain security. But look, the biggest role Australia has in US global security is the hosting of the ground station networks and the joint facilities at Pine Gap and Narungga and North West Cape. So I don't think it gets over the threshold of being such a big deal, frankly. Sure. We host an absolutely indispensable part of their space capability through our ground station network. We're heavily, seamlessly integrated into the global warfighting system. I don't think it's that big a deal.
Although it does seem that Darwin's role in the region could be substantially increased over time.
Yeah, well, talking to you from Darwin, sorry, that's a joke. I'm actually in Canberra. I'll take that on notice.
Yeah, I was expecting a bit more, Chris. I mean, we've obviously seen an incremental increase in Marine numbers in Darwin, and as Catherine's flagged, there's now going to be a fuel storage infrastructure installed there. But people have been speculating for years that a major US naval facility may be based in Darwin, and that hasn't materialised this week. But I mean, everyone who watches this stuff closely is expecting to see that in coming years.
Instead of that, we leased the port to the Chinese. That was pretty smart, but that's another issue for another day. Thanks both for joining me, and have a good weekend. Nicholas Rees and Catherine McGregor.
You too.
Thanks,
guys.